Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Let the Right Ones In podcast. I'm your host, T, and welcome back to episode number 2. On this episode, we'll just be talking about some basic beginner stuff regarding to writing, why it's important, if you want to kind of pick it up as a hobby or a career, things like that. So I do hope you stick around, and I hope this podcast is informative for you. The first thing we'll talk about is why even write in the first place. Why bother? Whether you're doing it professionally or not, writing is something very important for people. It's a very important skill because no matter what you do, no matter what your field, you're going to have to write, be it emails, reports, even just quick little notes and communications to your boss. It's important to be able to communicate effectively with writing. So even if you're not doing it creatively, it is always going to be a part of your life. It's always going to be something important that you should know and be proficient at. You don't have to be like Shakespeare or this great technical writer, but you should be proficient in it. It's an important part of today's world. That you be familiar with it and decent at it. And then, of course, there's the fun aspect of it. Aside from boring work and school emails and papers, there's a lot of fun that could be had with just writing for fun. Even if you're keeping a journal about your day to day life or things like that, it can be fun. It can be cathartic. And it can definitely be that way if you're writing something like fiction or poetry or about anything that interests you. It can be fun. It can be an escape. You don't really have to be, like I said, Shakespeare or anything, but it's fun. It's a good little escape. Something that I hear a lot is, well, is it profitable? Is writing going to make me money? It can, but that shouldn't be the main reason to write. Unless you're a freelancer or something like that, or a journalist or something like that. And even they don't get paid that much. But I don't think that you should go in with the expectation of, I'm going to make $1 million, I'm going to make bank immediately. It doesn't necessarily work that way. It can work that way if you're writing things like erotica and you're pumping out a lot. And I mean a lot of it, in a short amount of time. But if you're not doing that, then, I wouldn't expect to make like a shitload of money at first. It's going to take time. You got to build a portfolio. You have to kind of get your name out there. You have to build connections. You have to fine tone your craft. So unless you're like pumping out erotica at like a ridiculous rate, then, I wouldn't expect to be seeing Stephen King money right away. And I feel like you really shouldn't be in it kind of for the money. Like, yeah, I know there are people, and I would be a liar to say that money's not important. Money is important, no matter what you do. Your day job, any side jobs or side hustles that you have, even sometimes your hobbies and interests. Like, of course, sometimes you want to like make bank off of that. Why wouldn't you? But first and foremost, like, you should put having fun and just kind of doing it for yourself as opposed to making money. Like, I paint and stuff too. I just got into that. It's kind of taken the place of writing for me a little, but not really. And I just kind of do it for fun. I have been thinking about selling my stuff, but I'm not thinking of making that like a primary source of income. I mean, like, if it does become that, then cool, but I didn't start painting with the expectation that, oh, I'm going to be really good, I'm going to make bank. And I feel like you shouldn't do that for writing either. Like I said, of course, money's important. I would be lying to say that potentially earning money from writing or painting, wouldn't be a plus for me. But like I said, you shouldn't walk in with the expectation that you're going to make bank and that you're going to make bank right away, unless you're pumping out heavy, 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 heavy amounts of erotica. But that's just me. Someone might tell you different. Some other things that I feel are important would be writing for free, exposure books. This is something that I do plan on making a larger podcast talking about in depth, but some people may argue that to get your name out there, you have to work for free and that you should work for free. Not necessarily. I feel like if you really believe in a project or if you trust the person or you just kind of want to do something out of the goodness of your heart, then fine, you can work for free. But I wouldn't make it a habit, especially for things that take a lot of time, take a lot of effort. Like I'll proofread things for my friends and things like that if they ask me to. If they say, "Hey, can you do this thing for me for someone's birthday or anniversary or something like that," then sure, I'll do that for free if it's not going to take too much time. And then there have been projects that I've done for free. 3 of the stories I got published, I did not get paid for that, but that was fine because the proceeds for 2 of the books went to charity, and then the other one went towards the proceeds for that went towards another project. But I was fine with not getting paid for those. I did believe in the charities and the projects that the money went for. I trust the author who put this all together. She's very reputable. I knew of her. She had and still does have a great reputation. So for those, I wasn't too worried about working for free there. But if it's someone that you don't really know or trust, or if it's something that's going to take a lot of time and effort, then absolutely you should be paid for that. There was an instance, which I'll go into in the podcast where it's dedicated to completely exposure books. I'll go into more detail, but I had worked quote unquote, for this website. I won't give out any names, and it kind of wouldn't matter anyway because this page has changed numerous times. But I didn't know the guy who was running it at all, and I was promised that it would build my portfolio, which was fine. I was new and budding, so I didn't mind that. But I was promised other things like press passes and invitations to screenings and things like that, tickets to that kind of thing, which should have been a red flag for me, but it wasn't. I don't know. I was just kind of starting out at this time, so I kind of didn't really know any better. At first, it was fine because we were working on it together, me and this guy, and we were both posting pretty much the same amount, but then he started to post less and less and less, and the majority of the posting was going out to me. And I'll admit some of the things that I posted were kind of low effort, like talking about movie trailers and things like that. I would do that quite frequently because that didn't take a lot of effort. But I did do some things that, took a lot of effort: reviews, analysis of situations, analysis of shows, some listicles. Like those take some time. And I wasn't compensated in any way. I didn't get any of these trips or anything like that were mentioned. I was just kind of left in the cold. And then after a while, I was just like, look, man, this isn't working. I'm kind of done with this. And at this point, I kind of figured he was done with it too because he had stopped posting altogether. I don't even remember if he responded. This was years ago. And yeah, so that's how that kind of ended. There's a little bit more to the story, but I'll kind of leave it there. Just as a warning that you shouldn't really work for free if it's someone that you don't really know, don't really trust. Of course, get your money, especially if it's going to take a lot of time and effort. Like I said, if it's something that you're okay with not getting compensated for, then, by all means, then you can do that. But I wouldn't make it a habit out of working for free for everybody, because then everyone's going to expect you to work for free. And I feel like that's not right. As artists, as writers, of course, like I mentioned, money isn't the important thing, but if you're putting a lot of time and effort into it, then why shouldn't you be paid? You wouldn't ask like a doctor to look at you for free. So why would you consistently ask a writer, an artist to do things for you for free? Like, it's one thing if you're friends and they really don't mind, but it's another thing to, like, kind of be casual acquaintances and be like, oh, hey, do this thing for me, and then not really compensate them. But that's just me. Like I said, it's fine to work for free every once in a while. Not everyone's going to be able to pay you. Let's be real. Um, a lot of these publications are smaller, a lot of them. Some of these things are like passion projects people are putting together. But I feel like if it's something that you really want to do, people that you really trust, that, we're going to get the things done, or, something that you're kind of like, no love lost if you don't get paid for it, then by all means go ahead. But don't make it a habit. Finding your voice. You may want to write in a certain genre, but you may not be suited for that genre. Like me, I'm not that great at comedy, so I try not to exclusively write comedies or romance even. Like, I can do romance on the side, but it's not, my forte. I am best at drama and speculative fiction. With speculative fiction, it's funny because I always try to start it as like horror. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write this horror thing, and then I'll sit down and do it, and it always turns into speculative fiction. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Kind of made peace with that. Not a true master of horror, but speculative fiction, I'm good. I just have to, for me personally, to get like a good speculative fiction story out of me, I have to start it thinking as like, okay, this is a horror in mind, and then kind of go from there. But you should experiment in all different types of genres. See what you're good at, see what you're not good at. Even if you're not stellar at something, but something that you like, you can still incorporate that. Like I said, I'm really shitty with comedy, but I can incorporate that sometimes because I'm a sarcastic asshole. So, and I can make quips and things like that. So I like to make characters sarcastic assholes as well. And speaking of that, the Mary Sue. So Mary Suing is basically where you write a character that's you, and you make them the main protagonist, and everything that's happening is happening to you. It's basically a writer's fantasy, where you're just inserting yourself into the story. It's not necessarily a bad thing to insert yourself or certain aspects of yourself in the story, but it shouldn't be like super obvious. Mary suing is deeply frowned upon because a lot of people just consider it, projecting and kind of jerking yourself off, in the sense that, this character is the best version of you and they're living your best life and things like that. So, um, try to avoid that. It does happen, even to, super experienced writers. In some cases, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you should try to avoid it as much as possible, just to kind of avoid any ridicule. And also because, sometimes it does make you look like an asshole. I'm not going to lie. There have been some stuff where I Mary sued myself, and it's like, this is, just me projecting and me pretending to live my best life vicariously through these characters. And it's not the best thing to do. So try to avoid that as often as possible. It's definitely going to happen in the beginning because it's something unconscious for a lot of people. It's something that a lot of people don't realize at first, but if and when you do realize it, kind of change that shit because it's kind of not cool. And then the other thing a lot of people advise is to read, which is true. You should read as often as possible, and it doesn't have to be like books. You don't have to fucking read Shakespeare or Hemingway or these million-page novels. Like, you can read like a web cartoon or a manga or even like a fan fiction. Just read. Read a lot. Get lots of different voices because you never know who might inspire you, what techniques that you can use, what techniques you discover that you don't like, what styles you don't like, what genres you don't like. So it is important to read. The other thing that's important is practice, practice, practice. I know a lot of people say this, but the more you write, the better at it you'll get. It doesn't even have to be like every day. I know a lot of people say, oh, you should write every day. I personally don't think that that's helpful for me anyway, because you're going to get sick of it. Me personally, if you write every day. But if you designate time just to practice, and you don't even have to write a story, you could free associate, journal, something like that. It doesn't have to be every day, like I said, because I think that's kind of bullshit. You'll get tired of it. At least I personally will. You may be the type that's able to do that, but if you're not, don't pressure yourself to write every day, and then you should be good there. The other thing I would suggest is joining communities. While writing is a solitary thing, it's good to be a part of a community because it can provide you feedback, it'll provide you connections, and it will provide you with people to support you and keep going. There were a lot of times where I was in editing hell and I didn't want to keep going. I wanted to abandon shit altogether, but I had a good support system. I had people telling me, hey, keep going, keep pushing, keep trying. You're doing great. And you should also make sure that your community isn't just yes men. If you're just going to jerk each other off and go, oh, you're writing so good. Oh, you're so amazing. Fat, 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 fat. Oh, we're all so good. Fat, 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 fat. Nothing's going to get done. You're not going to improve. They're not going to improve. You're just jerking each other off. So make sure it's a community that's going to be honest with you, that's going to actually help you grow as a writer, that isn't just going to tell you, oh, that's good. Community-wise, Reddit does have some communities, some subreddits. I was a part of art writing for a little bit. It's useful in its own ways. Sometimes there were calls for submission and things like that and other tips, but it wasn't really my bread and butter. Twitter has really good communities. You can link up with lots of other writers there, and there were also like word sprints and things like that you could do. Twitter is a really useful resource. You can even just build like a community of friends if you want. A girl that I had went to high school with had mentioned this. So that's something you can certainly do. You can do that with other writers or friends or anything like that. Just make sure that you're all going to be honest with each other and honest with yourself. You don't want a group of yes men around you. You don't want to be a yes man all the time because you're not going to grow. It's just going to be a giant circle jerk. And then another important thing I would say, if you are interested in writing, is being able to take criticism. Sometimes you're going to get kind of unfair or unwanted criticism. Not all criticism is constructive. Some people just like to tear other people down. Some people don't know how to give constructive criticism. So while sometimes you should take it with a grain of salt, you should also take it with an open mind. You're not a god. You're not immune to mistakes. There is room to grow and improve. So even if you think something is unfair or if you did something intentional, even if something is your writing aesthetic or your style, you can't just dismiss any kind of criticism as, well, that's my style. I did that intentionally. That's my thing. That's what I do. You can't just discount everything like that. Like sometimes, yeah, there are going to be stylistic choices that people don't agree with, or character choices, or things that happen that not everyone's going to agree with or like. You can't please everyone all the time, but it is important to keep an open mind. And then when giving criticism as well, it's important to not just tear the other person down. Even if what you think they wrote is a piece of garbage, it's important to point out what you found wrong, but it's also important to find things that you like about a work too. I know some people say that doing the whole compliment sandwich thing in general is ineffective, but I think that can be a good thing. So basically, what the compliment sandwich is, they refer to it as something else as well, but I've always referred to it as a compliment sandwich, is where you say something that you like, then go with something that you don't like, and then something that you do like to kind of round it out. Some people say that that's not helpful in communication in general because they feel like you're kind of glossing over the important part, which is the criticism. That's kind of negative. But I feel like it still should be a balance. So even if you mostly dislike something, that's fine. You can say that. But you should also try to find something about someone else's work that you did like. For example, you didn't like their character development or their dialogue, but you really enjoyed the way they described something else. You can mention that. Or you can mention, why the thing didn't work for you. Like, I didn't like this dialogue because of this reason, or I didn't like this character, here's why. It's important to give good criticism just as it's important to be open to it and receive it. The other thing I would say is don't try to be like someone else. It's important to kind of find your own voice and to be yourself. Everyone wants to be, J.K. Rowling or Stephen King or Neil Gaiman, Shakespeare. You always want to be kind of who you idolize, but you can't be that person. Anyone really that you idolize. Like, you can work to take elements from them that you like. You can definitely take inspiration, but you're never going to be who they are. You know what I mean? You're never, even if you're at that level, like, you're not going to be them. So I think you shouldn't try to skinwalk other writers or people that you idolize. Certainly you can borrow from them, but I don't think you should actively work to be just like them because it's not going to work out for you. Writing should be fun. It's not always going to be fun, obviously. There are going to be times where you hate it, but you should get some kind of pleasure out of it. Like, it should give you like a joy and like a high. When I'm like writing and I'm really into it, like I feel like really good. I'm like really into it. Even if it's like something hard, like it's fun. And then when it's over, like I feel like this big release, or I feel like this high, a euphoria. That's one of the most important things. And then I also think it's important to build connections with people, and this kind of builds into, being part of a community. Writing can be lonely and it can be hard. It's good to have good people around you that understand and support you and want to see you succeed. And then, of course, if you have connections, you can help each other. Someone can help get you like a gig or introduce you to different festivals or book fairs and stuff that you can do. Likewise, you can help others. Like, I've recommended different festivals and things like that to people that I used to be a part of, different book fairs. I even met like a few really good writers who doing pretty well for themselves. I've kind of lost touch with them, and unfortunately, one of them did pass away as well. But you'll meet a lot of interesting people. There are a lot of interesting people at these events that are willing to help you. At the same time, not everyone's going to be super friendly or nice. I have encountered some really pretentious and god awful people. For the most part, everyone's really nice. Everyone willing to help. So I think that's also really important, is to get to know people, not just for the aspect of advancing your career if you want to have a career, but just to have someone in your corner that understands, who has been through or is going through the same things that you're going through, and they'll definitely be able to help, at least in that aspect of it. Another thing I would say is that you're going to suck. Even to this day, I feel like I'm not the strongest writer in the world. I'm not terrible, I would say. I've been writing or ever since I was a little girl. So ever since I was a kid, I've always really loved it, and I've always been really good at it. I've been kind of natural at it. But that doesn't mean that I'm a golden god. I am bad sometimes. Not everything I write is good, and not everything you write is going to be good. Sometimes it's going to be really shitty. So that's where editing comes in. It's important to edit it again after that. Have someone check your stuff, someone that you trust, someone that's not a yes man, that's not going to jerk you off to give you criticism, and then edit again. Always have fresh eyes. If you can, take a look at your stuff. The moment where you think that, in general, with your style, that there's absolutely nothing that can be improved upon, there's always something. You can always do like better dialogue, better character development, better visualization. You can use less adjectives. You can say less, like I am. So, you know what I mean? There's always something for you to improve on. You shouldn't just think that you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. You also shouldn't be jealous of people who you see are doing better than you. This is kind of what drove me a little to stop writing. There was a point where, when I first started pursuing writing seriously, I was hot. For like a year and a half, I was really hot. I was doing really good. Like I said, I had, in the first podcast, I may have mentioned this, or I may have mentioned this in this podcast, but I had my book self-published. I had two other short stories published, and I think I had a poem published. And then I had something else published a little later, I think. But, that's a pretty good amount, like for like a year and a half. So I was hot. I was on fire. But then I started not doing so hot. I started getting a lot more rejections. And it was discouraging. And then I was also seeing like other writers that I felt that weren't as good that were doing better. They had a larger following, they were getting these fellowships, and I was jealous. I felt kind of like I deserve that. They don't deserve that. I do. How come I'm not getting that? What am I doing wrong? And sometimes it's not necessarily anything that you're doing, just sometimes people are doing different things than you, and then they're just having a better run. Sometimes it's your time, and other times it's not your time. And when it's not your time, it's important to not get discouraged, to not compare yourself to other people, especially if they're writing in the same genre as you. You just have to be patient, you just have to keep trying. You just can't get discouraged, and you can't compare yourself to other people. Because if you're comparing yourself to other people, always worrying about what they're doing, then you're not going to get anything done for you. You're not going to be successful. And you have to worry about your own success over the success of others. That's not to say that you should stab people in the back or be shady or do shitty shit to people. But what I am saying is that if you do see someone on the come up, be happy for them. They most likely have experienced what you're experiencing now, and they'll experience that again. We all have highs, we all have lows. And again, sometimes we're not at the same stages in writing and in our lives. So it's important to not be down on yourself, but to push yourself to do better and just kind of not give a fuck what anyone else is doing. Because what is really important is what you're doing, and that's what you should be focusing on, not so much on other people. I guess lastly, I feel like you should also go to book festivals and book fairs. Those are really fun. I had a lot of time doing them. And then it doesn't have to even be like a book festival. If there's any kind of like hometown festivals, anything else that like accepts artists and vendors and things like that, if you have like books or poems or anything like that, that kind of pertains to it. Not even pertains to it, like the local things, like the local fairs and things like that. You can pretty much sell whatever you fucking want to sell. Um, but if you have something like related to like a theme of like a festival or something, then you should definitely sign up. Those are really fun. And you can sell other stuff too. You can just do those for fun, which is what I did. I didn't expect to make like too much of a profit from those things, but it was fun and you can make connections that way. And it's good to get out of the box in your room or wherever you do your writing and things like that. And then I guess the last thing I'll talk about is writer's block. It happens to everybody. If you guys want, I can do a separate podcast on writer's block. Some things that help are to people watch. I do that a lot, especially if I'm stuck with something. Get out into the world and take a look around. It's also good to be places that you wouldn't normally be. That could be like locking yourself in a closet or laying down in the bathtub or going for a long drive or a walk in the park. Things like that can definitely help. And then you can also talk to people if you're stuck. I used to talk to my mom a lot when I was stuck. I would tell her, hey, stuck on this. This is what's happening. And I don't know what to do. And we would just talk things out and then we would kind of brainstorm that way. Sometimes it's good to have an ear or like a fresh pair of eyes to help you. And that can help you get over it. Sometimes it just takes time. Sometimes you might want to like switch to a different project, or you just might just want to chill for a while, put it away, not work on it a few days, but just don't forget about it. I think that's it as far as beginner stuff goes. I feel like anyone can write, anyone should write. If it's something that you want to do, go for it. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it. No one's really good at it, especially at first. It takes time, it takes practice. And you don't have to be fucking Shakespeare. You don't have to get it published. You can just do it for fun. It never has to see the light of day. It can be just for you. And I think that's what's really special about writing. I really enjoy it. And, I hope you guys, if you do decide to give it a whirl, or if you're already giving it a whirl, I hope you're having fun and I hope you're enjoying it. So that's it for this episode. We'll be back next week to talk about Bandersnatch. I'll probably have my boyfriend on because he's obsessed. So we'll be able to talk about that together. I think that'd be more of a fun conversation instead of me just rambling on about it. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Stay out of trouble, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Bye, bye, bye.